Hello and welcome again to the next edition of Sundays with Giovanni in Giovanni's library. And today we're going to go into more depth into the HUN, the HUN spirit of the element, the liver, wood element. And the greatest depth is, of course, in Giovanni's book, The Psyche in Chinese Medicine. But we're going to pick his brains a little bit because it's actually a fascinating topic. And I'm Dr. Susan Lange, and I'm here with great interest to learn about the HUN in Chinese medicine.
Thank you, Susan. So the HUN in Chinese medicine is one of the five spirits pertaining to the five elements: the Shen of the heart, the HUN of the liver, the Po of the lungs, the Yi of the spleen, and the Je of the kidneys. And by the way, those five, we might call them spirits, there isn't really a Western word for them. Five spirits is okay. In Chinese they're actually called the five Shens. And strangely enough, sometimes they're also called the five Je, the Je of the kidneys. Sometimes, yeah, which is a bit strange. So the HUN is one of the five, and I always make the point in my books that what we call the spirit is the total of the five together, not the Shen of the heart. That is why I don't translate the Shen of the heart as spirit, but as mind.
And you're the only person that does that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Except maybe some Chinese translators might do that, but I don't remember. I'm definitely the only Western author who translates the Shen of the heart as mind. Bearing in mind, extremely important, that when I say mind, it includes the emotions, the emotional life.
Yes, always.
So not just cognition and thinking and memory, but it also includes the emotional life, the Shen of the heart, what I call mind.
Quick question then. So we've got mind and emotions, and where are the feelings and physical sensations? Is that the Po?
The Po.
That's the
Po.
That is literally
That
the
is
Po.
the Po, exactly.
So cool that this is, well over 2,000 years old, what you're talking about.
Yes.
And yet now we have modern neurophysiologists validating what the Chinese spoke about millennia ago. Very exciting. Yes.
And HUN and Po are often mentioned together in Chinese books. Again, difficult to know how to translate them. I translate them as soul, and most people translate them as soul. And I use the word ethereal soul for the HUN, and corporeal soul for the Po. I do that also because of the Chinese view of HUN and Po, because the HUN survives after death. It's not clear where it goes. It's not part of reincarnation. Reincarnation is a Buddhist idea. These ideas predate Buddhism by a lot, by centuries. So it's not to do with reincarnation.
But it exists
after death. But it exists after death. The HUN survives.
I wonder how they even knew that.
And that's why, interestingly, Chinese tombs, the people who could afford it, the aristocracy, had so many objects in the tomb. A lady, an aristocratic lady, would have a makeup set in the tomb because she needs makeup after death, or servants, or a dinner set. Books, interestingly, many of these tombs had the I Ching, the Tao Te Ching, had books, which is very interesting.
For the HUN,
to
edify itself.
Yeah, and so the HUN survives, and that's why I call it ethereal soul. And the HUN is yang compared to the Po, that is yin. And the Po does not survive. The Po dies with the body. It goes back to earth.
And that makes sense.
And it's yin. So the HUN goes to heaven and is yang. Heaven, nothing to do with the Christian heaven. The famous Tian that we talked about sometimes before. And the Po goes back to earth, the Po dies with the body. And the Po is particularly attached to the bones.
Oh, not the, I would think the Je would be attached to the bones.
True. but the po
But the
is.
po is 2.
And that's why in Chinese funerary customs, after, I don't remember after how many years, they open up the tomb and they clean all the bones. So they're very shiny. They clean the bones because the po is attached to the bones.
And the po is the lung.
And that's why tombs are so important in Chinese culture, even now. You know, your tomb has to be facing south, preferably, with water in front of it,
Just like
with a
feng
hill
shui.
behind. And you'll be amazed how many rich Hong Kong businessmen pay a fortune to buy land in China for their tomb, even now. Even now, it's very important.
Wow.
So the HUN, Chinese books, when they talk about the HUN, they always talk about the movement of the HUN. And there's a famous expression, the HUN is the coming and going of the Shen.
That's lovely. The hun is the coming and going of the Shen.
Or you could translate it in a different way, say, what comes and goes with the Shen is the HUN. But it means the same thing. And there is a corresponding expression of that for the po. So the HUN is the coming and going of the Shen. The po is the entering and exiting of Jing. And that's again its relation to Jing and bones.
Yes.
And bones.
So if you talk about the Jing, which is more, I guess, earthy in a way,
Yeah.
and the po is earthy. So one is the downward movement and the other is the upward
Very
movement.
much the upper moon. Not only that, but I will say that in a moment, is very much related to the ascending of liver chi. But we'll come back to that in a moment. So the theme of the HUN is very much movement. The famous free flow of liver chi that we talk about all the time is the physical manifestation of the movement of the HUN. And that movement is essential to our mental, emotional life, to our spirit, so to speak.
So the hun has to flow. That
Has to flow, has to move. It's in the nature of the HUN to move.
And it's the spirit of the liver, or the Shen of the liver that is moving. And if it's constrained,
Yes,
then there's problems.
there's problems. So what does it mean, the movement of the HUN? On a physical level, it means the free flow of liver chi, that we're all very familiar with. On a psychic level, in my opinion, the movement of the HUN means having plans, ideas, goals in life, a sense of direction in life. For example, when you decided to study Chinese medicine, that desire, that idea, did not come from the Shen. It came from the HUN. It's the HUN that gives the Shen that movement.
So is that why they call the liver like the strategist or the general?
Yes. Yes.
That makes the plans.
The famous chapter of the Susan that compares the organs to ministers.
Yes,
The liver is the minister of planning.
planning. Yes.
And that's that. It's planning, ideas, sense of direction in life, goals.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, the HUN needs to move. And that movement goes to the Shen. So the Shen needs that movement of the HUN.
Yes. So if liver chi is stuck, stagnating,
Yes.
as we say,
Yes.
then Shen is
The Shen suffers.
hampered. Yeah.
From this lack of ideas, lack of goals, lack of enthusiasm, lack of plans.
Yes, that has to flow.
Interestingly, on a physical level, we always talk about the free flow of liver chi, which is very important, but related to its psychic aspect, liver chi also ascends,
Yes.
needs to go up, vertical movement, ascends to the Shen. In order to go to the Shen, the HUN needs to go up.
Yes.
The liver chi goes up. And that's a physiological ascending of liver chi, not liver yang rising.
But it naturally goes up.
Yes.
It
Liver
naturally
yang rising
ascends.
is a pathology.
Yes, that's
But
too
liver
extreme.
chi naturally also goes up,
There's that ascending movement.
which nobody Nobody talks about this. That the liver physiologically also has an ascending movement. And that ascending movement is very important from a psychic level, to go to the Shen. The Shen needs that movement.
Yes, it does. It is that expanding upward yang movement.
And then if that movement is normal, then you have goals, ideas, plans in your life.
Yes.
The lack of those plans, ideas and goals, sense of direction in life is depression. One type of depression is that, from the lack of movement of the HUN.
So there's no upward movement, and there's no really interest, excitement.
Yes.
So
they don't know what to do, what job to do, what relationship is good for them, and they're depressed.
And so instead of going upwards, it's kind of imploding.
Yeah, imploding, yes.
It's going downwards. Or just
if
stuck.
There's stuck, the
Stagnant.
famous stagnation on the L.Ac.
Yes. And very common, unfortunately, today.
Very common.
You know, just watching television can cause your liver qi to get stagnant. Watching the
It is
news
very
can
common,
cause...
yeah.
All the medications can cause the liver qi to get stagnant.
And that's how I interpret this movement of the HUN. The Chinese books always talk about the movement of the HUN. Tui Shen Wang Lai. Wang Lai means coming and going.
So it's got to be that free and easy flow.
The movement of the HUN.
Yes.
And that's how my psychic interpretation of that movement of the HUN. So when there is that lack of movement, the person is depressed.
So what would you say causes the lack of movement most in the modern day? Because I know you talked about being a HUN frequency.
Yes. Well, I don't know, many different things. Usually it goes back to childhood very much, very often.
So there's childhood
Goes back
trauma.
to childhood trauma, very often.
So that can cause the liver or the emotions to stagnate.
Yes.
And then the qi doesn't flow, and then there's depression. Because it's not allowed to come out and flow. Okay. So that can be a key issue.
And then there's the opposite pathology. The movement of the HUN can be excessive.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite of depression. Mania, bipolar disease.
Yes.
The manic side of bipolar disease. Bipolar disease has both depression and mania. And this is a bit of a long story here, but I always stress that mania, to an extreme degree, you see it in bipolar disorder. Have you ever seen a person with mania, the manic stage of bipolar disorder? But it can also occur in milder degrees. In a milder degree, mania can be relatively common.
Yeah, like
Not
ADD
to the point,
in a way, because people, you know, it's diagnosed as ADD, but it goes through mania, mild mania, and then depression.
Yeah. So, and that I interpreted from a psychic point of view as an excessive movement of the HUN, the opposite pathology.
So it's too much movement.
Too much movement, too much goals, too much ideas, and they may read 3 books at the same time.
So they're obsessive.
They are up all night. One characteristic of mania is working at night, being up at night, for example.
Very common.
Not from insomnia.
Internet people.
Not from insomnia, but from choice.
Yes, because they're driven.
Because they're driven.
So that would be a symptom, a key symptom.
Yeah, yes, it would be. And that's manic behavior, which I interpret as excessive movement of the HUN. There is an interesting connection with art, and that's another of my ideas. Artistic expression comes from the HUN, not from the Shen.
Not from the Shen. Very interesting.
It comes from the HUN, from your soul. Of course you need the Shen as well. To compose the 9th Symphony, of course it needs the Shen. Beethoven needed the Shen as well, of course. But that idea, that inspiration, by the way, the HUN is also responsible for inspiration, comes from the HUN.
So are you saying that Beethoven, composing the 9th Symphony, had the Shen, but he also, it came
Without
from the
HUN,
spirit?
there wouldn't be inspiration.
Okay, so he had a strong HUN, would you say?
Yes, of course.
He had to have done.
And so artistic inspiration comes from the HUN. Interestingly, there is an American psychiatrist.
Is this the book?
Yeah, American psychiatrist who's written a book called Touch with Fire, which analyzes the lives of artists, playwrights, painters, sculptors, musicians. And she found that among artists, there is a disproportionate incidence of bipolar disorder, bipolar disease. And my interpretation of that is that the artistic inspiration comes from the HUN, from the movement of the HUN. And an excessive movement of the HUN makes you mad, makes you bipolar. So it's the same source.
So it's that feverish movement that gets them to keep creating.
The same movement of the HUN that gives you inspiration, potentially, a stress potentially, it can also make you mad. Because it comes from the same place. The movement of the HUN, the excessive movement of the HUN. And this is a very interesting book. It's called Touch with Fire.
And it's by K. Redfield Jamison.
Which, interestingly, she herself has bipolar disorder.
And she's still alive?
Yes, and she's written another book, the title of which I forgot. Very interesting book, and because she is a psychiatrist and she has bipolar disorder, it is the best description of what a bipolar person goes through.
Wow. In
the depressive stage and the manic stage.
And this is called the subtitle, Manic Depressive Illness and the Artistic Temperament. So,
yes, and the artistic temperament, yes.
So all about the HUN in here.
Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Basically, the same movement of the HUN that creates artistic inspiration, potentially, stress potentially, also makes you bipolar, manic.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. What else did you want to?
Well, what would be pretty cool is some points. Some favorite points.
Liver 3 does both.
Yeah.
And I use the points in the back, the outer line of the bladder, which is HUN-men, next to bladder 18 for the liver. There is bladder 47, which is HUN-men.
So the outer line of the bladder are often the emotional, spiritual points, aren't they, on the back?
Outside bladder 18, there is bladder 47, which is HUN-men. And HUN-men means door of the HUN.
Door of the HUN, yes.
And I use that in both ways, to stimulate the movement of the HUN, or to suppress the movement of the HUN.
So it regulates?
Yes.
Yeah.
Together with liver 3, very simple.
And liver 3.
Liver 3 and
so
bladder.
Liver 3 is down on your foot between your big toe and your second toe.
And
it's a very famous point.
Bladder 47.
Bladder 47. And also you have some other favorite points, don't you, that you use, which is do 24.
Many others, yeah.
But HUN points, yeah, do 24.
Do 24 and do 19.
Do 19, so do 24 just within, on the midline.
Yeah.
And then you have another one which is gallbladder 13.
Gallbladder 13, yes.
Which is, again, it's like level with the pupil of the eye and just have like 5 sun over, a little bit over. Very important for balancing, bringing the HUN back into balance.
Yes.
Yeah? Would you say?
Yes, calming the HUN.
Calming the HUN. And maybe balancing the HUN and the Shen?
And balancing the HUN and the Shen, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen patients, with excessive movement of the HUN in different degrees. I've seen full-blown bipolar patients.
So they're coming to see you when they're in the...
Yeah, I remember one lady who was convinced that she was being followed by the KGB in Amersham in England. And she was bipolar. Or I was seeing also people in a moderate I would call moderate manic behavior, moderate, not the full-blown. So, and that's another thing I always stress, that bipolar, the manic stage of bipolar disorder is relatively common. It's in milder states.
Yeah, especially in this day and age. Yeah. So these are points that can just help balance and harmonize
The HUN, yes.
the HUN and settle. So this is not instead of medication, I just want to be clear.
Oh, definitely not. If
No.
they are on
If-
medication for bipolar disorder, they should not stop it.
No, but this will can help kind of harmonize
Yes.
and
Yeah.
settle.
Yeah.
And great. So I asked you earlier if this was your favorite element.
I don't really have a favorite one. I don't. It's my favorite only so far as I'm very, very interested in Chinese philosophy and ancient Chinese philosophy, and the funeral habits of the ancient Chinese are fascinating. Mm-hmm. And they're all based on the fact that the HUN survives.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And I found that absolutely fascinating. Like, for example, why did they put books? Why did they have the Tao Te Ching?
Yes. Why they have these key philosophical Chinese texts.
And the I Ching.
Yes. Very important.
Yeah.
So somehow there, to the Chinese, there is and was an afterlife.
Yes, and I stress again, nothing to do with reincarnation or Buddhism. Yeah. Yeah. This predates Buddhism by many centuries.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and next time we'll probably do the kidney element, the je, and dig into that, which is equally fascinating. And I know your colleague Peter Denman used to call you a je freak in England, kidney freak, and now it's the HUN freak, because there's so many issues around the HUN these days. And once that liver chi comes back and settles, then there's more harmony and people can start to be able to connect with themselves again. So thank you so much for
Susan.
Wonderful words of wisdom, and to be continued. I'm Susan Lange, signing off with Giovanni Maciocia.